When a life ends, do all the secrets go underground? No, today Port Charles witnessed a terrifying truth. What did Marco say to Alexis Davis just before he died that turned his entire world upside down? Hey everyone and welcome. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please support me and give this video a thumbs up. General Hospital. The final moments of Marco's life unfold with an intensity that leaves Port Charles forever changed as he summons the last of his strength to reveal a devastating secret to Alexis Davis. A confession that not only redeems his own tragic fate, but also threatens to unravel the delicate balance of power, loyalty, and truth that has long defined the canvas. As Marco lies gravely wounded, the weight of unspoken truths hangs heavily in the air, his labored breathing echoing the urgency of a man who knows his time is slipping away. And Alexis, ever the sharp-minded attorney and fiercely protective mother, senses immediately that what he is about to say is no ordinary revelation, but something far more explosive, something capable of shaking the very foundations of the lives intertwined with his own. And despite her complicated history with secrets and betrayal, she leans in, compelled by both compassion and the instinct that this moment will have far-reaching consequences. Marco's trembling voice begins to unravel a carefully guarded truth, one that has been buried beneath layers of deception, fear, and calculated silence. As he admits that his involvement in recent events was never what it seemed, that he had been operating under pressures and allegiances far darker than anyone in Port Charles could have imagined. And as Alexis listens, her expression shifts from concern to disbelief, then to a dawning horror as the pieces begin to fall into place, revealing connections that implicate powerful figures and expose hidden motives behind actions that once appeared random or misunderstood. The revelation suggests that Marco was not merely a pawn in someone else's game, but a reluctant participant in a much larger scheme. One that involved manipulating key players, orchestrating events behind the scenes, and ultimately leading to consequences he could no longer control. And in his final moments, he seeks not redemption, but truth, a desperate attempt to ensure that what he knows does not die with him. Alexis, torn between her legal instincts and her human empathy, presses him for clarity, demanding names, details, anything that could help her make sense of the bombshell he is dropping. And Marco, with fading strength, delivers the most shocking part of all, revealing a connection that ties his actions directly to someone Alexis knows intimately, someone she trusted, someone whose betrayal cuts deeper than any courtroom defeat ever could. And as the realization hits her, the emotional impact is immediate and overwhelming, forcing her to confront the possibility that everything she believed about recent events and about certain people in her life may have been a carefully constructed illusion. The scene is charged with raw emotion as Marco struggles to finish his confession. Each word a battle against the inevitable, his voice faltering yet determined, as if he knows that this truth is the only legacy he can leave behind. And Alexis, despite her shock, remains by his side, urging him to keep going, to give her everything she needs to expose the truth and seek justice. And in that moment, the dynamic between them shifts from adversarial tension to a fragile alliance forged in the face of tragedy. As Marco finally reveals the last piece of the puzzle, the full scope of the secret becomes clear, exposing a web of lies that stretches across multiple storylines and implicates individuals who have long operated in the shadows. And Alexis realizes that this information is not just a personal revelation, but a potential catalyst for a chain reaction that could bring down reputations, destroy relationships, and ignite new conflicts across Port Charles. And just as she begins to process the enormity of what she has learned, Marco's strength gives out. His final breath marking the end of a life defined by secrets and the beginning of a new chapter defined by their consequences. In the aftermath of his death, Alexis is left alone with the weight of his confession, grappling with the responsibility of what to do next, knowing that revealing the truth could put her in danger, but also understanding that staying silent would mean allowing injustice to continue unchecked. And as she stands there, the gravity of the situation settles in, setting the stage for a powerful storyline that will see her navigating a complex moral and legal landscape, balancing her desire for justice with the risks that come with exposing powerful enemies. Meanwhile, the ripple effects of Marco's revelation begin to spread as whispers of his final moments and the mysterious secret he shared with Alexis start to circulate, fueling speculation and tension among the residents of Port Charles, each of whom may be connected to the truth in ways they have yet to realize. And as alliances shift and suspicions rise, the fallout from this single pivotal moment promises to drive the narrative forward with high-stakes drama, emotional confrontations, and shocking twists that will keep viewers on the edge of their seats. Proving once again that in General Hospital, no secret stays buried forever. And every truth, no matter how deeply hidden, eventually comes to light with consequences that no one can escape. I just can't hold it in anymore. It's just too much. Sighs and gasps, as the shock of Marco's final confession continues to reverberate through Port Charles, Alexis Davis finds herself standing at the epicenter of a storm she never anticipated. Her mind racing to process not only the devastating truth she has just uncovered, but also the dangerous implications of what comes next. Because in the world of General Hospital, knowledge is power, but it is also a liability that can paint a target on anyone who dares to hold it. As Alexis replays Marco's dying words over and over again, each detail begins to sharpen, revealing hidden layers she didn't fully grasp in the moment. And what once sounded like fragmented confessions now forms a coherent and terrifying narrative, one that suggests a calculated conspiracy operating within the very fabric of Port Charles society, orchestrated by individuals who have mastered the art of deception and control. And as a seasoned attorney, Alexis knows that such a revelation cannot be handled impulsively, that every move she makes from this point forward must be strategic, deliberate, and above all discreet. Yet, the emotional weight of Marco's confession refuses to be ignored, especially as it implicates someone whose connection to Alexis is deeply personal, forcing her to confront a painful duality between her professional duty to expose the truth and her instinct to protect those she cares about. And this internal conflict becomes the driving force behind her next steps, shaping her decisions in ways that could either bring justice or unleash chaos. Determined not to let Marco's final act of honesty be in vain, Alexis begins quietly investigating the threads he left behind, revisiting past events with a new perspective. Noticing inconsistencies she once dismissed and uncovering subtle clues that now seem glaringly obvious in light of what she knows. And as she digs deeper, it becomes clear that Marco was only one piece of a much larger puzzle. A reluctant participant in a scheme that extends far beyond his own actions, involving financial manipulation, covert alliances, and a series of calculated moves designed to manipulate outcomes in ways that benefited a select few while endangering countless others. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Port Charles, the absence of Marco does not go unnoticed, particularly by those who had reason to fear what he might reveal. And as whispers of his final moments begin to circulate, a sense of unease spreads among key players, prompting subtle yet telling shifts in behavior. Nervous glances, hastily altered plans, and a sudden urgency to cover tracks that may already be too exposed. And for those who know how to read between the lines, these reactions only serve to confirm that something significant has changed, that a truth long buried is now dangerously close to the surface. Alexis, ever perceptive, begins to connect these behavioral shifts to the names and hints Marco provided. And with each new connection, the scope of the conspiracy becomes more alarming, implicating not just individuals, but entire networks of influence that have operated unchecked for far too long. And as the realization sinks in, Alexis understands that she is no longer just an observer or even an investigator. She is now a threat to those who have everything to lose if the truth comes out. This newfound danger becomes evident when subtle warnings begin to surface. Cryptic messages and veiled threats that suggest someone is aware of her knowledge and is willing to go to great lengths to ensure her silence. And while such intimidation might deter others, Alexis is not so easily shaken. Her resolve hardening as she recalls Marco's desperation in his final moments. The urgency in his voice as he entrusted her with a truth he knew could cost lives. And rather than backing down, she becomes more determined than ever to see this through, to bring to light the full extent of the corruption and deceit that has claimed yet another life. At the same time, the emotional toll of the situation begins to manifest in more personal ways. As Alexis struggles to reconcile the image she once had of certain individuals with the darker reality now emerging. And this internal struggle is further complicated by the potential fallout of exposing the truth. knowing that doing so could destroy relationships, shatter families, and alter the course of countless lives, including her own. Yet, despite these fears, she cannot ignore the moral imperative that drives her. The belief that justice, no matter how painful, must ultimately prevail. As tensions continue to build, the narrative unfolds with increasing intensity, bringing other residents of Port Charles into the orbit of Marco's secret. Some unknowingly edging closer to the truth while others actively work to suppress it, creating a volatile environment where alliances are tested, loyalties are questioned, and the line between friend and foe becomes increasingly blurred. And in the midst of it all, Alexis stands as both a beacon of truth and a potential catalyst for destruction. Her actions poised to determine the outcome of a storyline that promises to reshape the landscape of General Hospital in profound and lasting ways. Ultimately, Marco's death is not an end, but a beginning. A spark that ignites a chain reaction of revelations and consequences that will ripple through Port Charles for weeks, if not months to come. And as the layers of deception are peeled back one by one, the true impact of his final confession becomes undeniable, proving that even in death, his voice carries the power to expose the darkest secrets and force a reckoning that no one can escape. You can't escape. It's over, Nathan. Thank you. In the days following Marco's death, the atmosphere in Port Charles grows increasingly tense, as if the town itself senses that a seismic shift is underway. And at the center of it all stands Alexis Davis, burdened not only by grief, but by the dangerous clarity of the truth she now carries. A truth that refuses to remain contained no matter how carefully she tries to manage it. Because every new lead she follows seems to open yet another door into a labyrinth of secrets that stretches deeper and wider than she ever imagined. And with each discovery, the stakes climb higher, pulling more lives into the orbit of Marco's final confession and making it increasingly clear that this is not a story that can be quietly resolved behind closed doors. Instead, it is one that demands confrontation, exposure, and ultimately consequences that will ripple across the canvas of General Hospital in ways no one can predict. And as Alexis begins to piece together a timeline of events leading up to Marco's tragic end, she uncovers a pattern of manipulation so precise that it could only have been orchestrated by someone with both resources and intimate knowledge of the players involved. Someone who understood exactly how to exploit weaknesses, leverage secrets, and maintain control without ever stepping fully into the light. And this realization brings with it a chilling conclusion that the mastermind behind it all is not just powerful, but patient, someone who has been playing a long game. While others remained blissfully unaware of the roles they were being forced to play, determined to expose this hidden architect, Alexis starts to take calculated risks, reaching out to individuals who may hold pieces of the puzzle, carefully choosing whom to trust and how much to reveal, knowing that one wrong move could not only jeopardize her investigation, but also put innocent people in harm's way. And as she navigates this treacherous terrain, she begins to encounter resistance that goes beyond mere coincidence, subtle roadblocks that suggest someone is actively working to hinder her progress. From missing records to uncooperative witnesses and even unexpected legal complications that seem designed to slow her down at every turn. Yet rather than discouraging her, these obstacles only reinforce her belief that she is getting closer to something significant, something worth protecting at all costs by those who stand to lose the most. Meanwhile, the emotional fallout from Marcos' revelation continues to spread, affecting those who were closest to him in ways that are both visible and deeply internal. As grief intertwines with suspicion and relationships that once seemed unshakable begin to fracture under the weight of doubt and unanswered questions, with some characters struggling to accept that Marco could have been involved in something so complex and dangerous, while others begin to question their own past interactions with him, wondering if there were signs they missed or truths they chose not to see. And this collective introspection adds another layer of tension to an already volatile situation, creating an environment where trust becomes a rare and fragile commodity. Alexis, acutely aware of how quickly things can spiral out of control, tries to maintain a sense of order amidst the chaos. But even she cannot ignore the personal cost of what she is undertaking. As the lines between her professional responsibilities and her personal life blur to the point of near invisibility, forcing her to confront difficult choices about what she is willing to sacrifice in pursuit of justice. And as the pressure mounts, she finds herself leaning on her instincts more than ever, guided not only by logic and experience, but by a deeper sense of purpose that has been reignited by Marco's final act of honesty. Because in his last moments, he entrusted her with more than just information. He entrusted her with the responsibility to ensure that his death was not in vain. As the investigation intensifies, a breakthrough finally emerges. A critical piece of evidence that ties together multiple threads and points directly toward the individual Marco hinted at in his confession. And the implications are staggering, not only confirming Alexis's suspicions, but also revealing the full extent of the betrayal at the heart of the conspiracy. A betrayal that cuts across personal and professional boundaries in ways that will leave lasting scars on everyone involved. And armed with this new information, Alexis faces the most difficult decision yet: whether to move forward with exposing the truth immediately or to continue gathering evidence in the hope of building an airtight case that cannot be dismissed or undermined. And this decision is complicated further by the growing sense that time is not on her side. That the more she uncovers, the more dangerous her position becomes. As those responsible may soon realize just how much she knows. At the same time, the narrative begins to converge toward an inevitable confrontation as the various threads of the story draw closer together, bringing key players into direct conflict with one another, and the tension reaches a boiling point when Alexis finally comes face to face with the person at the center of it all, the individual whose actions set this entire chain of events into motion. And in that charged encounter, the truth hangs in the balance, ready to be revealed in a way that could either bring long overdue justice or unleash a new wave of chaos across Port Charles. And as the moment unfolds, it becomes clear that Marco's legacy is not defined by the mistakes he made in life, but by the courage he showed in his final moments. A courage that continues to echo through the choices of those he left behind, shaping a storyline that is as emotionally resonant as it is dramatically explosive, ensuring that in General Hospital, the impact of his confession will be felt long after the last secret has been brought into the light. In the immediate aftermath of that explosive confrontation, the truth that Alexis Davis has fought so hard to uncover begins to take on a life of its own, spreading beyond private conversations and shadowy suspicions into the public sphere of Port Charles, where secrets rarely stay buried for long. And as the ripple effects intensify, the legacy of Marco's final confession becomes impossible to contain, forcing everyone connected to the web of deception to confront their roles in a narrative that has spiraled far beyond anyone's control. And while some scramble to protect themselves, others find themselves grappling with the emotional fallout of truths they never wanted to face, creating a volatile mix of fear, anger, and reckoning that threatens to upend long-standing alliances and redefine loyalties across the canvas of General Hospital. Alexis, now fully aware that there is no turning back, takes decisive action, leveraging both her legal expertise and her moral conviction to ensure that the evidence she has gathered is not only preserved, but positioned in a way that cannot be easily dismissed or silenced. And in doing so, she steps into a role that is as dangerous as it is necessary, becoming both a seeker of justice and a target for those who would do anything to keep the truth hidden. Yet, even as the risks escalate, there is a quiet strength in her resolve. A determination fueled by the memory of Marco's final moments and the trust he placed in her to carry his truth forward. Meanwhile, the emotional core of the story deepens as those closest to the unfolding scandal begin to reckon with the personal implications of what has been revealed, with relationships strained to their breaking points as accusations are made, defenses are raised, and long-suppressed tensions come to the surface. And in these moments of raw vulnerability, the true cost of deception becomes painfully clear. Not just in terms of legal consequences, but in the shattered trust and fractured bonds that may never fully heal. As the situation reaches its peak, the line between justice and vengeance becomes increasingly blurred, challenging Alexis to remain grounded in her principles, even as the temptation to push beyond them grows stronger. And it is in this delicate balance that the story finds its most compelling tension, highlighting the complexity of doing what is right in a world where right and wrong are often obscured by layers of history, emotion, and personal stake. And ultimately, as the dust begins to settle, and the full impact of Marco's revelation comes into focus, one thing becomes undeniably clear. His final act of courage has set into motion a chain of events that will forever alter the lives of those in Port Charles, proving that even in death, the truth has the power to demand accountability, inspire change, and leave a legacy that cannot be ignored within general.